I'm Joe Lample. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a Greener World, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. Perhaps the one group of trees that we just can't seem to get enough of are Japanese maples. They come in all shapes and sizes. Some do well in full sun, others are happy in shade, and many thrive in containers. Their shallow, fibrous root system makes them a go-to choice in the urban landscape, and their 4 seasons of interest make them an all-star selection with landscape designers in public gardens, like right here at Gibbs Gardens, just about an hour north of Atlanta. Today we're talking all about Japanese maples with 2 brothers that fell in love with them in their childhood and now have a thriving Japanese maple nursery. And it's their knowledge and passion that has people seeking their advice from all over the world.
In Japan, Japanese maples are some of the most revered plants. They actually call people who go to look at fall color momiji-gare, which actually means the maple lookers, the maple searchers, the people who search out the maples, because the maples themselves have much better fall color than any of the other plants. And because that, the leaf watchers are just known as simply the people who search out the maples, the maple hunters per se. And they're extremely revered in Japan. They're actually worshipped at some temples. And it's amazing the love that they have for Japanese maples in Japan. And you get there and you get in the middle of all that and you realize how that your passion just fits in with exactly the culture.
We've been very fortunate to travel all over, a little bit of everywhere in the world, and get to enjoy Japanese maples in a lot of different conditions. Some really fun ones. We got to go to Japan, we got to see Nakakomoto weeping. That was an amazing experience, getting to see something that had been around that long, and just amazing shapes and colors.
It's a 600-year-old Japanese maple, twisting, contorting, and it's nationally protected. You can't even take a cutting from it. It's guarded by monks. It was just shocking. You're just lit up like a Christmas tree, seeing such an old tree in the landscape that's so beautiful. It's considered the best Japanese maple in Japan. And it was one of those feelings where you're like, am I really here? Like, you know, little kids feel like, I just went to Disney World. And that's kind of that sort of feeling that's like, wow, I just got a photo with Mickey, but it's a 600-year-old Japanese maple. It's something that's it's gonna live in my memories forever.
And for both Tim and Matt Nichols, there are lots and lots of memories that involve Japanese maples. In fact, it's fair to say that the brothers have devoted most of their lives to this one species of tree. And while the plant known botanically as Acer palmatum is native to Japan, China, Korea, Eastern Mongolia, and Southeast Russia, the Nichols brothers have turned tiny East Flat Rock, North Carolina into something of a Japanese maple mecca, with a nursery and online mail order business that specializes in Japanese maples and offers over 1,000 different cultivars.
And so there's a Japanese maple for everybody. And there's a Japanese maple for every spot in the garden, as you can see in this garden, full of Japanese maples. I think there's about 300 Japanese maples in this garden alone.
There's something for every single season. Springs are amazing. There's all kinds of textures, contrasting colors, shapes. There's just a full spectrum.
The colors of red, green, variegated, the lace leaf structure, the larger leaf. You can have some leaves that'll be almost the size of a dinner plate on some Japanese maples. So the diversity in the habit, the form. Some are weeping, some are going to be more upright.
Even in the winter months when Japanese maples are out of leaf, they still have a character under their own. There's such unique texture. There's the architecture that they bring to the garden. Even when they're completely barren, there's just a lot going on there.
There's Japanese maples for every single spot where people live. We even have some Japanese maples that can go to zone 9B to 10A, and other Japanese maples that can go all the way to a zone 4. So extremely cold tolerant. And so there's a Japanese maple for every spot in the garden, or every spot you can think of, because they're also great container plants.
But Matt and Tim know way more than just the plant tag specs on these trees. For them, each Japanese maple is like a character in a centuries-long story, each with its own unique history and background.
The stories behind the Japanese maples are super important to us, so we love going and traveling, learning about these trees, who invented them, who came up with them, why, what they named it for, who they named it for in a lot of conditions, and just that aspect of it's really interesting to us. We love the stories behind these trees.
Naka Komodo weeping, we found out while we were in Japan, is actually the same plant as Jiro Shidari. Jiro Kobayashi's father, when he was 6 weeks old, had snuck and got some cuttings and released it under his son's name, Jiro, and then Shidari for weeping. And so we've actually had that tree in production for years, and we didn't even know it until we went to Japan and saw the original. And those exciting sort of stories are what we love to look up and dig into, and then we love to share with our customers, because that is what makes people get excited about gardening, when they can live that moment that they found that tree or that they selected that tree and really appreciate that tree for what it is. I mean, every tree has a story, and those stories are meant to be shared.
Just like every tree has a story, every garden has a story, and most gardeners have a story too. For me, it began as a child when I rounded the corner of my parents' home and accidentally broke a branch off of one of their favorite shrubs. And I didn't want to get caught, so I panicked and I jammed that branch right into the base of the plant and covered it up. Well, lucky for me, not only did it take root, it sprouted, and so did my lifelong passion for horticulture. For Matt and Tim Nichols and their thriving Japanese maple business, well, that story has roots too, that goes all the way back to a family member's favorite shrub.
He was a neighbor of a friend of mine, and he had a couple of Japanese maples in the yard, and it was in the spring of the year when the little seedlings was come up and it was about that tall, and they were just starting to mow the grass. And he was just mowing them down like they were weeds. And I begged him to let me get some of them. And I had a little Boy Scout pocket knife in my pocket. And I just reached down there and dug them out with the pocket knife and gathered them up in a little bunch and brought them home and transplanted them. And out of 25 or 30 of them, I may have got 4 or 5 of them to live. And they were up, and I would dig them up when they were about broom handle size, ball and burlap them, and I'd go to the flea market and sell them. And I'd make a couple hundred, maybe $300 every weekend like that. Some of them did well, and some of them didn't do so well. But I was basically dealing with seedlings at the time. And along about the 70s, or maybe, I started realizing, hey, there's more than one kind of Japanese maple out there. First thing you know, I had 20 varieties of Japanese maple. I had some lace leaves, maybe a multicolored one like the Benishishahinga. But basically they were all palmatums and maybe a couple of lace leaves. Well, I was growing them out here in the backyard, and I'd take them to flea markets and sell them.
Matt and Tim came along and soon found themselves helping out with Dad's hobby.
You know, Dad would sell at the flea market, and some of the ways growing up that we got involved was we'd go out into the yard of my grandmother's house, and she had this 35-foot red Japanese maple. It was just gorgeous, and we'd crawl all around on the ground in the grass in the spring, right as the little red seedlings popped up, and we'd be out there digging up all the little red seedlings to have red Japanese maples to sell at the flea market.
You know, Dad was selling at the tailgate, so we had these things we would do too to kind of complement what he was doing, and so we would grow these jump up Johnnies and pot them up, and I had this thing I would do. Since Tim's 6 years younger than me, he was the cute little brother. And I would push him out up front with a whole bunch of plants. Still run the same game now, right? But Tim would come up and talk to everybody and be the cute little kid, 2 or 3 years old. And so it would really draw people in, and we'd sell a bunch of small, cheap flowers for compliments for the maples to go with my dad's trees, I guess. So.
Oh, we used every tactic possible. If someone was buying a Japanese maple, we'd say, "Oh, you'd like some Johnny Jump Ups too?" Or we'd be up there, and I would be a 5-year-old little kid, and Matt would put me up in the front, and he would say, "Would you like to buy some flowers from my brother?"
And then we'd use that money to go and buy comic books and action figures and general geeky superhero stuff for the era in the 80s. So yeah, it was a great time for us learning to make money with plants, I guess.
For both brothers, the lesson took root.
I don't remember a time without Japanese maples, to be honest with you, but it kind of grew for us. And then a little bit after college, it was like, why don't I do just this? Like it kind of dawned upon me that this was a career path that could be a real option and just pursuing something I loved.
I was in school. I was a political science, public policy double major, and Matt and I realized that our passions were Japanese maples. We both just decided, hey, let's do this full time.
With Tim and I, it wasn't like one of us said, hey, we're gonna do this, and the other was like, had to be talked into it. It was more of like, if you're doing this, I'm doing this too.
We both were just so passionate about it. We would be getting Dad gifts for Father's Day, and we'd say, hey Dad, here's some trees we got you for Father's Day. And he'd be like, guys, I think you're a little more crazy about this than I am. I've already got 20 varieties. And we'd be like, here's 5 more for Christmas. And we started digging into it and getting excited about it more than he was. And finally he said, guys, this is yours if you want to take it and go with it. And that's what we did. And we've been blessed that we keep growing more and more.
The Nichols brothers have since become one of the country's top resources for Japanese maples. And it's not just home gardeners shopping for a specimen for their front yards. They're making a name for themselves among the most well-respected nurserymen in the business, too. Today, their guest at the nursery is a leading authority himself.
So Tony Avon is a rock star when it comes to plantsmen. He's on the Mount Rushmore of plantsmen.
It's really nice you've kept it in cultivation, being something that old, almost an heirloom plant.
It kind of is, and a lot of times there's a lot of these really cool trees that you really don't have to reinvent the wheel on. It's like, it's been around since the 1700s. It might not have got to America as early as some of the other cultivars that are more well known. I mean, it's been around as long as Shishigashira or Tamukiyama.
I remember going to talks with Tony all the time, and we'd sit in the audience and listen to him talk, and we were just excited about it. And one day he said, hey, come grab lunch, we'll talk business. And Matt and I looked at each other like, yeah, of course.
And my wife, I was trying to explain to her, because she doesn't come from a horticultural background, who Tony Avent was. And I said, well, it's kind of like if Michael Jordan said he wanted to work on your jump shot, you take that advice.
This plant here is actually starting fall color a little bit. This is one of my favorite Japanese maples. It's called Shiranami. Shiranami, we were told the name means light wave. And it's a early Japanese maple from the 1700s list.
This one just has awesome spring colors too. In the spring, it's light green early, then more of a pink, then more of a bright yellow, and then back to light green again. And here in a few weeks, this whole tree will be an electric kind of peach color.
And in the fall, it'll go through yellows, peaches, oranges, and reds all at the same time. And so that's where it gets that name of light wave, is that fluctuation in colors that it gives.
What's really unique about the Nichols situation is the fact, A, they're brothers. All right, normally brothers are fighting. They're not normally passionate about the same things and can get along and can almost finish each other's sentences, and both have the same passion. And the unique thing about them, they've got the plant knowledge, the plant love, they love the plant stories, but they also have the business sense. And that's what's generally lacking in mail order people. They love plants, but they have terrible business sense. So to have that combination of somebody that can really take the reins and do things the right way in mail order, that's just so exciting for us. Mail order has always been very interesting, and it's very cyclical as an industry. Back in the 80s, we had just an incredible number of mail order nurseries. Then during the late 90s, 2000s, that really has dropped off, and we really haven't picked back up. We're at a very low point now with mail order because it's certainly being challenged by the box stores, which make things available so easy, even though the selection is very limited. So there are plants here that nobody will find anywhere. I mean, I've traveled all over the world. There are things I've never seen or never seen available. So that's incredibly exciting, and the whole opportunity of putting together a garden, they're growing plants in the ground so they actually know what the plants are going to do. That's so rare because most people now, they buy the plants in, they sell the plants out. They've never grown them. They don't know what the plant's really going to do. These guys understand plants because they've grown it. That is worth so much as a business, to have people who really know your product. You just can't describe how valuable that is. I think a lot of it goes back to the stories, because people now, the new generation, really likes to hear the stories behind the plants. Everything now to them is an emotional tie-in. And y'all are one of the few nurseries that share the stories. Here's where this came from. Here's the story behind this. And I think that's drawing more young people. You know, now with 60% of our plants being sold at the box stores, there's no story there. You go there and there's no passion. And yes, it's functional. You go there and, oh, I like this and this and this, and this is pretty. You have no connection to the plants. You have no story. And people love to share. When people invite people into their garden, they can now take that same story and say, look at this maple. Let me tell you the story behind this. This was collected by this guy that was hiking up this volcano, and the volcano erupted, and he came down with this seed in his hand. And what a great story. People love sharing stories. They love having the emotional connection to the plants, and you're giving them the opportunity, and that's what's so wonderful.
But to come up with 1,000 different cultivars, it takes more than just a love of Japanese maples. So Matt and Tim spend a lot of time on the road seeking out those unique varieties, and those travels have taken them to the far reaches of places like Alabama and Texas, where they heard of an old timer who was growing some unique specimens inside of a coffee can. And they've also been to Mount Fuji to see Japanese maples growing in their native habitat. And whenever they have permission, they'll take cuttings of these trees and they'll bring those cuttings back to make more plants through a propagation technique called grafting, which is really part art and science.
With grafting, basically what we do is we take a trimming off of one tree and then put it on the root system of another. And that way we're replicating those traits, but creating that good, healthy root system as well on that new tree.
So think of it as a dog breed. There's a tree that we know the exact traits of. It's going to be this color in the spring, say it's going to be red in the spring. And by grafting it, we know it's going to continue on that red trait, but it's also going to grow to a certain height. And we know that by the grafting. Same fall color. And so those sets of traits between the height, fall color, shape, the leaf shape, all that comes back true to form when you graft it.
It's the cutting, called the scion, that determines all of those characteristics for that particular tree. The scion is carefully cut into a strong and established rootstock and nursed along until it begins to grow on its own as one plant. The rootstock doesn't even have to be the same variety, as long as it's the same species. If everything is healthy, the rootstock will adopt the characteristics of the scion as it flourishes and essentially become that variety. And for the Nichols brothers, the rootstock they use for every single one of their grafts is not only dependable, it's also pretty near and dear to their hearts.
My grandmother planted Japanese maples in the 1950s. We collect seeds off of her trees and plant them out. And those are the root systems that we use for each of our trees. That gives them extra hardiness for all across the South, extremely hardy, and really performs well for people all across the United States because of they've shown the test of time. These trees we're collecting seeds off of were planted in the 1950s and have thrived and been healthy trees this entire time. And they're going to be healthy trees for people in their gardens as well.
It's the best of both worlds there, because what we're doing is creating a tree that has that great aspect of the root system with all those really cool characteristics of what's on top. So we're creating a plant that overall has the best overall chance to perform well, look really cool, and then also have that amazing root system that's going to be non-invasive and do exactly what we want.
The first year we started grafting, we failed miserably. And then because of that, we looked at it and we said, well, There's either two things you do here. You either quit or you dig down deeper and you learn more.
They did learn more, and now Tim and Matt each perform about 10,000 grafts per year. Most happen between December and March, when the trees are dormant, letting them concentrate the rest of the year on shipping trees to long-distance customers all over the country.
If you have a nursery, you're asked constantly, hey, can you mail this to Texas? People find out about you, you've got a real rare plant. They find you because you've got such unique plants, and then everyone starts asking for you to mail to them. And so it's either you get into the mail order business or you say, no, I can't. And we got into the mail order business, and it's amazing the growing pains you go through from learning how to ship in the beginning stages to now, we ship out hundreds of boxes each week. They actually can take 4 to 5 days to ship out to California, but we water them before we ship them, and they're in the container just like someone picked them out here at the nursery. We just take a little bag, we tie up around the tree, and we have a custom designed box that holds that pod in place, and we spray them down with an anti-decusant that keeps them from losing moisture during shipment, and the trees just arrive just like they picked it out here at the nursery. And we'll fold them up into a little 10 by 11 inch box that could be 4 foot tall or 6 foot tall, but they just fold up into this little box, and then they pull them out and they expand out like an umbrella.
And of course, they're happy to sell Japanese maples to gardeners who show up in person to wander the amazing nursery and hear the stories for themselves.
That is Acer palmatum, Twombly's Red Sentinel.
The narrow form.
Yeah, and
there it is.
It has a tight, compact habit.
Great form, and especially for those people that have those smaller spaces but still want that Japanese maple. That's a great idea to put into the landscape.
Yeah, and the landscape's shrinking every day, and to get something that's going to give you some height but fit in a small space with some color, fits in a lot of small spaces. This is the reason why it's often used, but it's cherry red in the spring. It goes a little bit of a green red during the summer, but then it goes back to a bright red again during the fall. And it's great for those small spaces or even containers. It was actually found by a guy named Ken Twombly in Connecticut as a dwarf mutation, he thought, and then when he grew it out, it grew to this shape of a red sentinel, and that's where it gets this name of Twombly's Red Sentinel.
It's a perfect name.
Yeah.
But be warned, you're almost guaranteed to find a perfect tree, or two, that you simply have to have. If you've got two, I'll take two. Pack them up. Let's take these home.
All right,
got it.
sounds good.
Grab that one.
Perfect.
The best part about being in the nursery business is being able to do what you love. We love growing Japanese maples, and because of that, we can choose what plants we want to grow and grow some really unique and interesting varieties and be able to share our passion with other people.
You got to find something to be passionate about, and this is a great thing that is constantly changing and always has something new to get exciting and interested in.
And on top of that, how much better is it to be able to do it than do it with your brother?
My brother's my best friend, so I'd be wanting to share with him whatever I was crazy about, but it makes it so much easier when he's crazy about the same thing. So we're both equally passionate about this, and it just makes it a fun thing. There's always a new challenge. There's always something new. We're building a greenhouse tomorrow, so things are going to get busy. We got to figure that out. So there's always something new to tackle, and it's easier when you got a brother to tackle that with you, for sure.
You likely would not be surprised to know that we left Mr. Maple Nursery with several new Japanese maples of our own to add to our ever-growing collection. And no doubt we'll be going back several times in the near future to buy more. But you don't have to show up in person to buy new trees thanks to online commerce. And we have a lot more information on Japanese maples on our website, including a podcast interview that I did with Matt and Tim that tells a lot more of their story. The website address, it's the same as our show name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Joe Lample, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World.
We took something we're passionate about, and we worked for each other. I mean, that's essentially what we do is, we get the opportunity to work together, and I feel like I'm working for him, and I know he feels the same way.
Yeah, I feel like he's working for me. No. It's amazing to be able to do what you love and do it with someone that is your best friend.
So who's Batman and who's Robin?
Batman, come on now.
I'm Superman.
Batman beat Superman, duh.